There are a lot of hard choices to make in Baldur's Gate 3, but what if there was no player to decide what happens? Do our companions have any hope without us? And would the world be screwed or saved? In this video, I've put my 1,000+ hours of in-game knowledge to use, and dove deep into the game's dialogue to provide evidence for what I believe would happen if our characters never existed. Hope you enjoy. Let's start with the obvious. For most of Baldur's Gate 3's story, the one who holds the artifact is the most important character, as they are the only one with the protection needed to survive the campaign. With that in mind, at the start of the game, Shadowheart has it while trapped in a pod aboard the Nautiloid. She is fully out of commission, but even without a player, Lae'zel is also aboard the ship. She's normally the one who tells you what to do at this stage of the game, and on her own would easily fight her way through the imps, completely ignore Shadowheart's cries for help, and reach the helm of the ship to crash land it in Faerun. Without either character knowing it, Lae'zel saves Shadowheart's life and gives the story legs so it can walk. Now that Shadowheart is free on the beach, we can follow her day one journey. As a companion, she voices the opinion that finding a healer to cure the tadpole is the top priority, and because she is encounterable by players in several locations, it's easy to follow her exact path. She first tries to enter Wither's Crypt, fails miserably, and then climbs up the cliff to enter the Druid's Grove before the gate battle occurs. That's an important detail because Kaga only lets the player meet her because of their participation in the gate battle. She also disapproves of helping tieflings.
No point in wasting precious time on a lost cause.
So the Grove means very little to Shadowheart compared to a player being here. By this point in the story, players would likely have at least a couple of companions. So while Shadowheart is resting in the Grove, let's take a look at what's going on with the others and see how well her odds fare at finding any potential allies. Will is the only one in the same area as her, but he's more concerned about hunting Karlach and protecting the Grove than any of the goals Shadowheart currently has. Even if we ignore the blatant conflicts of interest between these two for a second, Will has much bigger problems. Without a player to at least absorb damage, he almost always dies during the Goblin Gate battle. It turns out the decision to jump from a strategically superior high ground position into the attack range of several melee combatants looks badass, but tactically is the equivalent of being a kamikaze pilot during World War II. I tested what happens if you don't participate in this battle 20 times in a row, and he died 18 of those 20 battles. Sorry Will, but statistically you're dead. If you're wondering, Zevlor always managed to survive this encounter and save the Grove on his own afterwards, probably because he maintained his high ground advantage. Funny how that works. As for Gale, it's pretty obvious he's screwed too. I'll let him explain in his own words why.
No! Can't make it out by myself! I'll perish in here! I'll perish!
Shadowheart has no reason to interact with this rune, nor does anyone else really from what we can tell, because Gale never reappears without a player helping him. Sadly, he's out of the picture before he even got a chance to munch on his first leathery boot. Astarion is off on his own, and he normally explains to the player that he's okay with that.
I was ready to go this alone.
So there's no reason to believe he would seek out allies or visit the Druid's Grove. He would likely survive by feeding on wildlife for quite some time, but he has both vampire hunters and Cazador searching for him. By default in the game, if a player never encounters Astarion, then he is found again in Act 3 as a zombie, having been captured by Cazador's men. Allies are dropping like flies in this story, and Karlach isn't any better off. She's quite literally cornered by paladins sent by Zariel to take her life, with a trail of blood leading right to her. To make matters worse, she normally tells the player that she has no intention of sneaking away, but intends to fight against them. She has no chance of defeating these paladins on her own, but let's pretend for a second that somehow she did the impossible, winning that skirmish. Her infernal engine has a literal clock on her life, and she won't be under the protection of the artifact to prevent her succumbing to Ceramorphosis. As she never reappears later in the game if a player misses her here, I think it's safe to say that she too is out of the story, and would not survive very long without a player. As sad as it is that most of our beloved characters are helpless without us, Lae'zel is the one other origin character who will survive Act 1. On her own, she will escape her tiefling captivity to enter the mountain pass even if a player never found her in the region. So we'll catch back up with her again shortly. All this was to say that Shadowheart won't be making any friends anytime soon. During her first night, she mentions a couple of things.
We can't take the lack of symptoms for granted. Each hour that passes, the thing inside us grows,
making it clear she wants to continue searching for a healer. Day 2 of Shadowheart's journey would have her leaving the Grove following the road towards the Goblin camp. She has the Disguise self spell, approves of others using it here, and was trained to use Disguise by Shar's followers. So getting past a few low-int goblins shouldn't be difficult for God's favorite princess. While entering the Goblin camp, the prison protects her from the Absolute's control, and we know she isn't gonna find a cure here, nor much of anything else really. After resting one night in their camp, the Dream Visitor will approach to explain that she is under her protection.
You will not become a mind flayer. Not while I'm around. I'll protect you.
This is crucial for putting a stop to Shadowheart's pointless search for a healer and instead returning to her primary mission, delivering the artifact to Baldur's Gate. In the morning, she heads towards the mountain pass to complete the region, having done almost nothing at all. Raphael would show up at camp, as he has eyes tracking the artifact, and as Shadowheart would normally tell the player not to trust the devil, we know Raphael is wasting his time. Withers also joins up here, but only to explain that she currently has no need of his services. He acts just as a creepy undead stalker, who doesn't explain what he's doing, how he got here, or really much of anything, just like he would for any player. Before following Shadowheart any further, I'll quickly cover Minthara and Halsin's fate for Act 1. Minthara is unable to locate the grove before the druids lock it down unless a player helps her, and since she couldn't complete her mission, she'll go straight to Moonrise Towers to report the failure. As for Halsin, without a player, he's dead. His corpse can be found in his cell when the Goblin Camp questline was never resolved. When casting Speak Dead on him to ask what happened, he has very little to say.
Drow. Killed.
This may mean that Minthara killed him, but he may also be talking about the drow that he killed near the grove. Regardless, that's 5 of the 9 potential companions for this story dead in Act 1, showing just how important you are to these characters. Back in the mountain pass, Lae'zel is always near the entrance if not recruited earlier by a player. She waits here to greet people upon entering the region and suggests grouping up to locate the nearby creche. Shadowheart is desperate for allies, but the question is, would she be desperate enough to side with a Gith? If a player was to accept Lae'zel at this point while traveling with Shadowheart, it pops up with Shadowheart disapproves. With that, it's safe to say these two are not joining up, especially when you consider that she saw Lae'zel alone ignore her desperate screams for help back on the Nautiloid. From here, there are only 2 directions she can take, to the creche or along the road. Even if she accidentally wandered over the creche for a second, I'm sure once she saw Gith, she would be out of there, which leaves only the main road leading to the Shadow-Cursed lands. There is a minor problem with that direction though, and that's that there are undead in the way. It's impossible to examine the game files to see how Shadowheart would handle encounters like this. Instead, the best I can do is explain a viable method for her to use at the appropriate level from the exact path I've shown her on. For any other companion, I don't know how they would have got past here without invisibility, but she's a cleric, and Sanctuary is OP. She could just dash by them without taking a single hit. What I can't explain is that somehow Lae'zel also made it past the undead, but Larian said it happens, so I believe it. Almost immediately upon entering the Shadow-Cursed lands, we'll find Lae'zel once more, only this time she succumbed to the Shadow Curse. There's no solid explanation as to why she came here. I can only speculate to say that she got lost on her way to the creche, took a wrong turn, and ended up here. Intelligence isn't her highest stat, so she probably didn't realize the curse was hurting her, and stayed in too long much like a frog in boiling water. This anyways marks the end of the road for the last origin companion. The story can't end in the same way for Shadowheart, because Shar gave her immunity to the Shadow Curse. This blessing also gives her a new idea.
I need to watch for any place dedicated to Lady Shar. A temple, perhaps.
She now has a secondary purpose in the Shadow-Cursed lands. The Goblin Camp down the road is unable to call the Drider without a lyre unless a character uses parasite powers, something that Shadowheart doesn't approve of using herself. Following the road leads to stronger cursed areas, and upon entering she learns her protection is not guaranteed everywhere. For now, she's stuck, and when Shadowheart was stuck in the past, we know she sought out settlements like the Druid's Grove and the Goblin's Camp. Luckily, just up the road she can find the Last Lights Inn. Jaheira, wary of outsiders, entangles Shadowheart upon entry, but just seconds before taking her life, Marcus shows up to save the day. Because of the parasite, he claims she is an ally, thinking Ketheric sent more help to secure Isabel. It isn't clear who this guy is, but she would certainly not turn away someone saving her life. Jaheira would then invite Shadowheart inside for a drink to explain the ongoing situation with Moonrise, Ketheric, and the Absolute. After the discussion, it's recommended to speak with the Selûnite priestess upstairs. How did this character feel about Selûnites again?
It is my holy mission to oppose Selûne, her teachings and her followers.
I guess that means she won't be meeting with Isabel. While leaving the safety of the inn, the Harpers explain that they know the cultists have a method to survive the stronger effects of the Shadow Curse, and they want to set up a surprise attack on their convoy to find a way to reach Moonrise Towers. At the ambush site, Shadowheart is forced to lead the dialogue. As a brainwashed cult member, whenever Shar is mentioned in dialogue, it's safe to assume that's probably the choice she would make, no matter how dumb I think that option is. Telling the Drider she worships Shar triggers an immediate combat against all these absolutists, and now she has another problem on her hands. Because Shadowheart has done nothing and helped no one, she can't be higher than level 3. Having no companions to help either makes this fight impossible to win. Thankfully, you don't technically need to win this fight to be able to progress the story. All that's required is the Moon Lantern. As a cleric, she could cast Command Drop on the Drider, steal the lantern, and sanctuary herself to flee the area. The Harpers involuntarily give their lives to cover her escape, and the Daughter of Darkness can continue on just fine. It would make sense to go directly to Moonrise for most characters right now, but Shadowheart is not most characters. She's been taught that completing her mission by delivering the artifact to Baldur's Gate is more important than her own life. Taking the path there reveals an absolute army is blocking the road, which would force her to focus on other things. With no other options, Jaheira, the Dream Guardian, and her own curiosity all point to Moonrise Towers. Inside here, she'll see Minthara for the very first time, but moments later, she's sentenced to death and taken to the dungeons below. She'd also get to witness Ketheric's invincibility and learn more about the Sharan traitor. Then accepting Zarel's mission puts her back on track to meet Balthazar. Personally, I thought she'd be ready to focus on the main quest now and not give two shits about a drow prisoner she'd never previously met. But on the way out of Moonrise Towers, Shadowheart voices an opinion.
Perhaps we should consider helping Minthara. She may be a useful person to owe us a favor.
Looks like she decided she finally wants an ally. As she's not earned any experience since the last time she fought, the only way to free Minthara would be by deception. Then sneaking her out past the guards isn't all that challenging, with her being a trickery domain cleric. Minthara's terms to an alliance are to kill Ketheric, work together to find a cure, and take down the Absolute, all of which align with Shadowheart's goals perfectly. She joins at level 6, adding at least a sliver of viability to the trials ahead. Afterwards, it's time to enter the mausoleum and descend into the Gauntlet of Shar. Finally, a section of the game where it makes sense for her to actually do stuff. She can solve the first Darkness puzzle to gain entry, then meet a couple of Balthazar's bony boys. This encounter normally isn't that interesting, but because it's technically the first enemy in the story that she has a reason to fight, may as well take a look at it. She believes these undead to be a test sent by the Dark Lady, and the battle here is harder than you might expect. Thanks to her murder hobo friend though, it's not impossible. Being underleveled may have even helped them here, as Turn Undead doesn't deal radiant damage to trigger the undead's damage reflect passives until level 5. Upon seeing the trials, like a giddy schoolgirl, Shadowheart jumps in head first, sneaking through the stealth puzzle, smiting through the mirror battle, and mazing through the maze. Shar would normally tell her where to find the spear if she did miss it, but the odds of this girl not exploring every inch of the sacred temple and missing it are astronomically low. Overall, this area would net a lot of XP, 3 umbral gems, a spear, and some sexy armor to boot. A bit more exploration, and eventually she'll need to be tested further by more of Shar's warriors. Not any more difficult than the last, these two achieve victory over the dead, and they're rewarded with Balthazar's ugly face. The Necromancer is clearly defiling Shar's sacred bedroom. However, there's still a Shar dialogue option to agree to help him, plus Shadowheart normally approves of taking Flesh's bell from him. I took this to mean she's okay with temporarily siding with blasphemers to further her own goals. Yurger, on the other hand, well, his crimes are on another level. He admits to slaughtering every Shar worshipper that ever walked these grounds. Balthy stealing a bed is a Goldilocks level of crime by comparison. Yurger needs to pay for what he's done. The first role to convince the Maragons to kill each other is rather trivial, but anything beyond that is realistically out of reach. It'd be down to just Yurger and his cat. Ringing up Flesh evens the odds a bit, and after a lengthy conflict, the party claims victory over the Hellspawn and possession of the final Umbral Gem. With all preparations complete, Shar urges Shadowheart to enter the Shadowfell and wield the spear to make a sacrifice. There was no way of knowing that Balthazar was going to follow her inside after doing all the legwork. He doesn't belong here, and when told that, he ignores her to go find the Night Song on his own. Having spoken with Balthazar previously, she learned he's a necromancer, and silence is a pretty strong spell against magic users. While he's silenced, Minthara is able to bash in his undead brains, making sure to kill him before he gets a chance to summon any undead minions to overwhelm our heroes. The Night Song is all that remains in the Shadowfell, and it's only when Shadowheart travels with a player that she would even consider sparing Dame Aylin's life. Without any influence on her, the decision is always to become a Dark Justiciar. This time too would be no different. Happy with the outcome, Shar gives 2 direct orders to her newly promoted Chosen.
First, punish the traitor, Ketheric Thorm. Once he is vanquished, Baldur's Gate awaits. Your holy work will continue there.
As far as I'm concerned, an order from her own god would be done without question. A side effect of the Night Song's death is that Isabel is unable to maintain her protection of Lastlight's Inn. Shadowheart couldn't know that was going to happen, so the party would likely travel there first in hopes of recruiting allies for the fight against Ketheric, but instead find zombies and thorny plant monsters. A search for survivors would yield none, only revealing the corpse of Jaheira, who fell in battle to the shadow-cursed undead. Coming here isn't entirely worthless though, as the supplies held by the Harpers would be free for the taking. Back at camp, they'd begin working on a battle plan, but Withers wants some attention.
Come, there are important matters to discuss.
He calls them over to explain he wants to right the balance. For the mere pittance of gold, he offers loyal warriors. Not strong warriors, mind you, but it could be enough to give our heroes a chance in a head-on war against Ketheric. Approaching Moonrise, disciple Zarel is waiting outside with a few soldiers, but not nearly enough to pose any meaningful threat. Usually Jaheira or the Night Song would have rallied the troops to Moonrise's doorstep and forced the whole tower on high alert. But since those 2 characters aren't around, the stronghold goes about business as usual. Our underleveled heroes easily pick apart the fragmented army of the Absolute. With the tower cleared out, the rooftop confrontation with Ketheric goes down, and although it would surely be close, he's no insurmountable foe. After Ketheric's escape into the colony below, ordered by God to murder him, the party takes pursuit. Down here in the stink pits, there's nothing marked on the map nor any obvious direction of where to go. Let's say they got lost down here and walked into every ambush possible. They'd be at best level 7 with a level 8 Minthara by the time they need to descend down that glitchy ass elevator. The OP restoration pod still exists for unlimited spell slots, but would that be enough to beat Merkel's lapdog without the Night Song? In my opinion, yes. If I could do it without Barrelmancy or cheating at these levels and on Tactician, I'm fully confident the story should continue for our heroes. After his defeat, the Dream Guardian instructs the party to take his Netherstones and suggests they gather additional allies in the city. With the road to Baldur's Gate clear, the party can rest, get ambushed by Gith, jump into the portal, and greet the Emperor. If there's one person you don't have to ask twice to kill a Gith, it's Shadowheart. She'll happily take up arms with this Mind Flayer to save its life. Afterwards, the Emperor explains his whole life story, how no one knew what he really was. Yeah, right, buddy. Then he offers an evolution which is undoubtedly refused by Shadowheart. Having finally made it to Baldur's Gate, the mission given by Lady Shar takes a higher priority than even saving the world. This group wouldn't know where to go, but they would have a good idea of where to search.
Most people seeking entry to the city will be refugees. I'd look wherever they're gathering.
Her intuition is correct, as a lookout by the name of Ferg Droger calls her over for a short conversation. This gives her the where, but as for the how, the city isn't yet accessible. By sneaking past the guards and breaking in through a crack in the wall of the keep, entry is possible. At his inauguration ceremony, Gortash poses an alliance. He does no harm to them, they do no harm to him. An alliance that both these girls would surely approve of. Wandering through the city into the House of Grief, she'll be invited by Viconia into the Cloister of Somber Embrace. From here, she does her best to sway the soldiers against Viconia.
I sacrificed Seluna's own daughter. I am your rightful leader.
I shall stand with you.
Making for one of the easiest encounters she'll ever face. After victory, she has some last words for Viconia.
I won't remember you at all. Nobody will.
Shar then beckons her chosen into the Chamber of Loss, coercing her to kill her own parents. With their death, she becomes the new leader of Shar's followers, then is given one final order from the god.
Soon a great battle will commence in this city, and you shall lead my forces to victory. Now go forth.
At this point, she can realistically replace Wither's hirelings with her own loyal followers. The only task left on our heroes' minds is to put an end to the threat of the Absolute. The remaining quests with that objective in mind are to gather allies, kill Orin, and take on the Brain. Due to Shadowheart's complete non-action during Act 1 and evil tendencies throughout Act 2, there's not really a lot of allies left for her to gather. Only 8 of the possible 27 allies for the quest are still obtainable, and 5 of those don't make any sense at all for her to side with. Since Viconia dropped the vault security key and speaking with her corpse instructs her to go there, at least there's some reason to travel to the bank and begin the quest for the first ally that even slightly fits into the story. Inside the bank vault, there's a robbery in progress by a known to be dead Jaheira and Minsk. Following this 10k gold bounty into the sewers would begin a skirmish with Minsk. As a renowned hero, it would be great to save him and recruit him, but sadly, this is impossible. Even if recruitment is attempted, there's no Jaheira around to convince him to join up. The party is forced to kill off the game's final companion. Continuing on to wrap up this questline in the guild, there's not even a choice to side with the Zintarine, and being forced into the unlosable battle ensures Nine Fingers will give her support in the war against the Absolute. A bit of wandering around the city would eventually lead to Volo, and as a companion she opts to save his life.
I suppose we should aid him.
This completes the ally search for now and begins the quest to track down Orin. Stelmane's murder is all over the newspapers, and a talk with the lead investigator on the case would tip her off about the other murders, eventually leading to the discovery of the dwarven serial killer. Then once he's been dealt with, his note unlocks the murder tribunal. It would make things easier for her to bow before Baal and become an unholy assassin, but Shar isn't one to approve of her chosen siding with other gods, with Ketheric being a prime example of how she deals with traitors. Instead, the party has to slay Sarevok. He at least drops a map with the exact location of Orin's murder temple though, handy, because it would have been a hell of a struggle to find it in the sewers without that. Valyria is also freed here for the final endgame ally, and then it's time to follow Sarevok's map, through the sewers and straight into the Baal temple. Orin is furious she didn't get to kill Sarevok first, and her Slayer form wouldn't be all that challenging as the party is actually caught up to level 10. Act 3 rewards a lot of experience for everything, so it didn't matter much in the long term that nothing was done in Act 1. With Orin's stone in hand, they return to Gortash to share the news of her demise. Gortash does have something to say though.
Hand me the Netherstones and we will rule as one.
Good idea. And let's trust the fox to safeguard the chicken coop while we're at it.
She'll refuse to hand over the stones and successfully pass the test of her resolve. He gives the location of the Morphic pool, and after commandeering a boat, the party sails there. Back on land, Gortash would explain how important this is, lead the domination, and fall to the brain, because the Emperor never extended his protection to the man who initially forced him into slavery. But thankfully he does pop in to at least spare Shadowheart's life at the last moment. Allying with the Emperor is the only real chance at success, and after the disgusting brain suck scene, the party's back to the upper city. Going head on into this courtyard battle would never make realistic sense for any party, so it's time to enter the sewers, battle through here, and face the gauntlet to the brain. The same as a player would do, because realistically there's no choices to be made here. Without touching any side quests or really many encounters outside the ones discussed in the video, the party is level 11. Pretty much exactly where you'd want to be at the bare minimum right now. Unlike us players who sneak up the crown, they would be forced to fight the dragon and the mind flayers in combat before channeling it. Once inside, they of course manage to slay the brain, and it's time for Shadowheart to make a decision. Does she dominate the brain and take control of the whole world, or end the brain's existence? I think she would at least suggest ruling the world with the Emperor, as Minthara is notorious for telling people to do this. But he gives a very solid explanation as to why this is a bad idea.
But whoever becomes the Absolute faces a war with the entire Githyanki army.
Shadowheart at this time already has everything she wanted in life, and starting an all-out war with the Githyanki doesn't make any sense. Being the chosen of Lady Shar, leading her people, and doing her god's holy work is enough for her. The party would finish off the brain, crash land into the sea, and reflect on a long, hard-fought journey with a celebration. The camp epilogue scene for this version of Shadowheart has her looking happier than ever before. She tells us they're attracting followers easier than ever now with the Absolute out of the picture, and with how aggressive the companions are to form relationships in this game, I'm sure Minthara and her will live happily together. That brings us to the end of Baldur's Gate 3's story. But I want to make it clear this is just a fan theory backed by the game's data more than anything else. If you disagree with anything, that's totally fair. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch my videos, and special thanks to my channel members for their additional support. Have yourself a wonderful day. Proxy out.